Alright guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to look at the 2023 BMC Roadmachine 3. This is a bike that sits in BMC's endurance line in their road bike catalog. So today we're going to look at the specs/features, we're going to check out the ride quality, and then lastly we're going to answer the question, should you buy this bike? So let's get right into it. Alright guys, so the first thing you'll probably notice when looking at this bike is honestly just how cool it looks. So a lot of times BMC paint jobs are pretty flashy and bright. This one is a little bit more subdued, but it still looks really shiny in the sunlight, and I think it just looks really sporty. So it's a bit understated, but I think this is a really cool design. Now BMC has different tiers of their carbon. So they have their baseline carbon, and then they have what they call their 01 series carbon. So this is not the 01 series, this is their baseline carbon, but it's still a great carbon, and the ride quality is really awesome. You guys, BMC puts a lot of their money into R&D rather than marketing, and I think it really shows. Now the way BMC names their bikes is they usually have like a Roadmachine 1, Roadmachine 2, Roadmachine 3, and so on, and the model number corresponds to the componentry spec. So the 3 series, which this one is, will ship with Ultegra Di2. Okay, so starting with the frame. So a couple things that stand out with this frame. So first of all, you'll notice the drop seat stays. Now BMC claims that they're the ones that sort of started that trend about 10 or so years ago. And so what the drop seat stays do is they allow the seat tube to retain a bit more compliance, making the bike feel a bit more smooth on road imperfections, because the seat tube is going to have just more room to flex, whereas when the seat stays are higher, it prevents the seat tube from flexing as much. Now BMC adopts what they call their TCC carbon within the build of this frame. It's called their tuned compliance carbon. It's supposed to just make the frame feel very comfortable, and I think you really notice a difference. This ride feels very smooth. More on that when we get to the ride quality. Now the other thing you may not notice, but you'll definitely see it in the numbers, is that the trail figure for the front fork is pretty long. And so what that means is the ride feels very confident in its handling, but the overall wheelbase still is relatively small. So it's kind of got this combination of endurance / racy aggressiveness, which is a really interesting combination. The other thing you'll notice is we have a bento box mount up at the top, which is really cool for those long endurance rides, which this bike is supposed to sit in that category. So it makes sense to have a bento box mount on the top. And then of course we don't quite have the internal cable routing throughout. We do have internal cable routing throughout the down tube, but we don't have it through the head tube. Now the 01 series version of this bike do have that, but we don't get that on this model. Alright guys, so moving on to the components then. So the first thing you'll notice probably when looking at any bike as far as componentry goes is going to be the group set. So this bike is running Ultegra Di2. This is the R8100. This is the newest Ultegra, and you guys, it shifts very well. I've always been a SRAM guy, but I gotta say, having ridden this bike, I'm tempted to move to Shimano for a couple reasons. One, the shifting is really smooth and really precise. And two, I like when I shift the front derailleur, I have never once gotten a chain drop, whereas with SRAM, I do get that every once in a while. It's to the point with SRAM bikes where if I'm on a group ride and I don't want to get dropped, I probably just avoid shifting that front derailleur at all costs. Whereas with Shimano Di2, I have full confidence I can shift the front derailleur and not get dropped. Alright guys, so moving to the top of the bike then, looking at the seat post, this is a D-shaped seat post, and it is carbon fiber, which is excellent. A lot of times these bike brands will give you seat posts that are not carbon fiber. We get one that's carbon here. That's going to again help increase the compliance and the comfort, and also the fact that it's D-shaped is also going to help the compliance and comfort. And of course with any D-shaped seat post, they're just really easy to adjust up and down because you don't have to worry about the horizontal adjustment like you do with round seat posts, and it just feels very premium. The way that the seat post comes in contact with the rest of the frame, there's a little screw you adjust at the bottom of the top tube, and the integration just makes it again seem really nice. Now the saddle the bike ships with is a Physique Taiga, not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. I really don't like that saddle. I found it to be very uncomfortable. It just kind of digs through the soft tissue. So I have a custom saddle on here. It's an SQ Lab saddle. It's all going to be personal preference, but but I got rid of that pretty quick. All right, guys, so moving to the front of the bike then. So the stem is going to be a BMC RSM01 stem. It is aluminum, and then the handlebar is going to be a BMC RAB03 aluminum handlebar. I do wish it was kind of more of a one-piece or at least carbon fiber. These are both going to be aluminum, as I mentioned. Now, this stem is a -8-degree stem, but you can flip this up, and in that case, it'd be a +8-degree stem. And there's a little bit of extra height you can see here on the chimney. So you could raise this a little bit and make it a bit more comfortable. Now, the handlebar, it does feel a little bit oval-shaped, and it does feel like just bulky and premium. A lot of times with a lot of manufacturers, they give you stems and handlebars that just feel like total garbage, like they're straight from a Home Depot store and they just slapped it on there. These components, even though they are aluminum, I would say they definitely still feel very premium, and I think they look premium too, which is really good because, again, a lot of bikes I have to just take the handlebar and stem and pretty much they just have no value, and so you got to replace it right away if you want something semi-comfortable. What we get on here I feel like is fairly comfortable, although again I wish it was at least a aero handlebar. I think that would have really improved the comfort and the look of it too, frankly, but you know, it's not the end of the world. Now, the wheels I'm running on here are not the stock wheels. These are a set of deep dish reserve wheels with some Conti GP 5000 tires, 28 mil. Now, this bike ships with XRD 522 aluminum wheels. I would say that's a strike against it. For this price point, I really do expect carbon fiber wheels, and I do not like how BMC is giving some aluminum wheels stock on this bike. I have not ridden on those wheels, but I don't think they're very premium, nor do I think they're even worth much, and honestly, I couldn't find any information online. They seem to just be something probably manufactured someplace overseas and slapped on this bike as a cost-saving measure for BMC, so I would recommend probably replacing those wheels with something different. All right, guys, it is a beautiful day out here in sunny California, so let's take this bike on a quick ride, check out how it feels, and then we'll come right back. Alright guys, so I'm riding 28 mil tires right now, but there is a tremendous amount of compliance in the back that I feel like is not just due to the tires. And that's one of the first things that stands out to me right now when riding this bike. It's just the forgiveness of the frame and the smoothness of the ride. It really kind of feels like I'm gliding over a cloud right now, which is awesome. There are a bit of road imperfections here, and this frame is just eating them up. One thing I noticed too is that this bike feels super snappy. It's almost like it has characteristics of a lightweight climbing bike, but packaged in more of an endurance-oriented geometry. It's really interesting, and I feel like this is kind of what you want in an endurance bike, right? You don't want an endurance bike to feel boring and sluggish and slow. You want it to feel fun, which this definitely does, but it also feels like just super stable, and I think the long trail in the front is what's helping the stability out quite a bit. And trust me, I've gone down some pretty steep descents on this ride, and I don't feel like I'm getting blown around by the wind or anything. And it's almost like, you know, you pick a line and this bike just follows it. Now, geometry wise, I'd say this is still a little bit aggressive. So, you know, if you want like pure endurance and pure comfort, I'd say still the Trek Domani is probably going to be the best option in that. If you guys have been following my channel, you know how much I love the Trek Domani. This is going to be a little bit more aggressive geometry than a Trek Domani. Similar stack figures, but longer reach figures for sure. The most I could probably do on this ride would be like, I don't know, 50, 60 miles, and I'd probably get a little bit sore, but this is still an awesome option. Alright guys, so yeah, like I mentioned, I mean, this bike definitely feels very comfortable to ride as far as the road dampening features go within the frame. And there's no like gimmicky features. You don't have like suspension or anything like that. It's just kind of all within the frame. You really do get a frame that feels very comfortable over long distances with the road vibrations. Now, geometry wise, as I mentioned, it is still a bit aggressive. So to call this a pure endurance bike, I think is a bit of a misnomer. I would say this is probably going to be more like a comfortable race bike. If you want something that's truly comfort oriented, I still think there's better options like the Trek Domani, for example, which if you guys have been following my channel, you know how much I love that bike. But if you want something kind of in between a race and a endurance bike, then I think this is a really good option. And I like how BMC is sort of redefining endurance into something that's exciting. So it doesn't feel, you know, boring like a conventional endurance bike is sort of stereotyped to feel like. This definitely feels like a snappy race bike when you're riding it, but it's not going to be as destructive to your neck as like a true aero race bike would. So in conclusion, should you buy this bike? Well guys, right now this bike is being offered at a pretty big discount of $4,400 because they did just release a new version of the Roadmachine. So it's actually a really good time to buy this version. Now the new version is going to be a little bit more comfortable as far as the geometry goes. They did increase the stack a little bit and they did reduce the reach, but that one's also going to be more expensive. This one is being offered at a discount and it's a pretty good price for about $4,400, especially with that Di2 Ultegra group set. You're getting a really solid package for an excellent price. My only complaints, again, I wish the handlebar would have been an aero handlebar and I wish the wheels would have been carbon wheels, but again, for that $44-ish $100 price point, I think it's a pretty good compromise. So who is it for? I'd say if you're doing aggressive and perhaps semi-long group rides, this is an excellent option. It's also going to be great for going a little bit off-road if the trail takes you there. It's not going to be like a gravel bike by any means, but if you do find yourself doing some sketchy riding in some weird terrain, this will compensate a little bit for that, whereas like, you know, a lightweight climbing bike wouldn't really be too forgiving in that situation. So I think it's kind of a good all-rounder. Now, if you really do want something purely for endurance and purely for comfort, I still say go for the Domani or something like that. But this is a great all-around bike, and if you are doing like 20, 30, 40 mile rides and you want something that's aggressive, that looks cool, and is going to be comfortable, I would say this is a great option and I really recommend it, especially for that price point. Alright guys, that's going to be my review. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support. If you liked it, drop a like. It really does help me and the channel out. Otherwise, thanks again. I'll see you in the next one.